but I've set it up where you can see my screen so that you can hang out if you want. If not, I'll just be doing a YouTube video. Thing I'm going to need to do is tweak my video. Probably, I don't even think I need to be wired for this, so we'll see how this goes. But don't expect my audio unless someone asks a question that motivates me to get over and hop on my laptop or hop on my microphone over here. I would love get some sort of like lapel mic when I'm over there, but anyways. guys can actually hear me. Oh, we got someone that needs to be banned. I didn't even see them on my moderate. You need to be banned. There we go. Anyways, super chill stream. Not a lot of going on. I might turn on some audio. Anyways, so while we're here, what I need to do is I need to flag my screen to something else for a sec. You know, I'm thinking about this. This is perfect. Because I have to log into my user management system and I can't show that like easily without any sort of security breach potential. So give me just a moment here to do some auth and I'll tab back over. All right, so I'm having some issues with giving access. In my secondary account, I think it's been flagged because it's considered suspicious or some stuff. It happens because it's kind of like a fake identity, and I can't figure that out. It's informing me that it is not a GitHub user. Absolutely. So let me see if I can get it working. Worst case, I think there's a way to set it up that my server proper asset. The Jamfest is set up with properly, but Yeah, I don't have this proper. See if I can Jamfest. But yeah, you guys can't see much right now while I'm working on this. That. But there's not an easy way for me to show what I'm working on. I think what I did is that on interesting. I actually never did configure latest. What did I pull from Jamfest? Now that I'm looking at this, I have more questions. Because I had modifications locally on Jamfest, but I thought I pulled these up through a Git pull. Doesn't look like it's end of the world. I can just use my credentials for Zachary for this. So, yeah. Okay. With that in mind, oh. So, it looks like I might be able to clone it onto my credential. So, and then I'll go back to share. This is just parts that I'm kind of going into things I don't want to share on my screen, so you could just hear my voice. It's ironic because most of the time you can't hear me, and then when you can hear me, I'm not doing anything visually. But all right, Git server onto rebuild. Yeah, okay, so repository not found. You should have access. According to this, Jamfest has access, but GitHub does not. Figure this out real fast. I'm also adjusting my mic that I can talk while I work on this comfortably. Okay, so Jamfest repository server. It's technically a public server, and it utilizes, oh, it's because I have read-only access potentially. Let me see if there's a collaborator. There is not. Could make a new account. I would love to use my server. Because apparently I have access to V2, my RebuildEQ. So how did I do that? How did I give access to requests? My other GitHub account. RebuildEQ server is named Rebuild server. Okay. This is a different account. That's the problem. I have two accounts. I'm going to delete or archive this one. This makes more sense. Okay, so if we sign out of this and we log in with Rebuild server and authenticate it. There we go. So rebuild server needs to be added as a contributor to the RebuildEQ system. There we go. And dashboard, RebuildEQ. Okay, he should have full access now. Now if I go back to Z420 and I clone, repository not found. Why not? Yeah, the contributors have write access to RebuildEQ. Probably need to get an accepted invite. It's always a process, you know, just to give access to people. So he sees it. Because I'm not logged in properly with, I see. Probably need to regenerate my GitHub key for Z420. Let me do that real quick. We're going to go ahead and say SSH keygen GitHub -f GitHub. And we're going to overwrite. No passphrase. Then we're going to cat github.pub. Copy that pub key to my RebuildEQ server GitHub account under SSH keys. Add the key. Give it a title of my server name. Now, we're going to do a SSH to get at github.com. And now I'm a rebuild server. Now, if I go back to EQ server and we git clone the server, shit, I put it in the wrong directory. Source RebuildEQ git clone. Perfect. Now we got it right. it took some finagling. All right, so let me remove some of my credential stuff. Make sure everything is on the up and up, and I'll send you back over. All right. And I think I have this set up where you guys can like hear me. Let me set it up so I can see if anyone's chatting. This stream in general is going to be pretty chill. I'm already 40 minutes in, geez. But, yeah. So now we have the repository on the remote server. So this will allow me to open a new tab, connect to Z420, and then go to the document view, open folder, set this to source RebuildEQ server. And now I have it, so I'm SSH'd to my remote box, and I have proper access via a user account called Rebuild Server. And now we can like pull down BaseDB. And now we can also open up a where's the container? Reopen in container. What this is doing is my box is SSHing into another box. That other box while SSH is opening up a Docker container that is a dev environment. And this will allow me to spin up the server and test it, and also have it kind of self-contained, and it's not eating resources on my local box to do this. Yeah. And okay. So this will take it a moment because I haven't cloned or started a dev environment in a while in this box, but once this spins up, I guess we could also, while we're waiting, SSH into Z420, go to RebuildEQ, and inside server, we have these config files that are kind of like genericized, and we can still utilize those. I think the make file needs to be tweaked to be similar to Jamfest's. Because in Jamfest, I did some improvements. I'm closing Windows. Go ahead and look into that. So this right here is RebuildEQ local. This is the SSH rebuild. And yeah, what we need is the Jamfest rebuild, which is here. It has this make file on the local system. I believe this is symlinked though. Doesn't look like it actually. I versioned it as a local file. Pretty sure I fixed this later in let me close tabs. I fixed it so that it uses a symlink system instead and uses it based on base. Don't know though if that is configured. Where did I do that? It's been so long since I've worked on this, but you can see this is still cloning. Let's just do that. We go to maybe Reexemo. I think it may have the server config to do a dev container where on initialization, it creates a symlink for the makefile. Nope, it does not. That's fine. We can make it a root makefile. That's not really going to hurt anything. And this will compile Linux. It'll run the Docker build. It'll set the prep work. This is the key step for us where it's cloning all these repos and configs. Which, speaking of, do we have that on here? We do. Okay. Cool. So yeah, we're just waiting on this to do an initial dev container clone. It has to do a bunch of junk initialization. Okay, coming back to this. The dev environment, easy to ship. That's kind of what I'm working on right now. We did this step. And we're working on this step. It's honestly done. We've primed it by doing the configs. This later. And this later. We're going to ignore the Z420 hack stack, and we already copied that over. And I did like that. Yep. Okay. So essentially, this finishes copying. What we can start doing is when this actually spins up, we'll end up with a database that we can SSH into. I'll probably use Beekeeper, because Beekeeper is a pretty nice little database. Or you can see like my other databases in here that I have access to. Man, this takes forever. I bet you it's just this machine. Like, how much memory am I using? This has 32 gigs. It's apparently only using 5.3, but then it also only has 772 free. But that's because of the caching system. Like right now, this machine actually not being utilized that heavily. Like the CPU and stuff isn't super strong. I'll have to keep an eye on it. I don't know why this is taking so long. I guess the processor's not fast, but okay, we're finally up. Okay, so you can see here, I run a command at start where I take the make file and I symlink it just like this, which is perfect. Yeah, that is perfect. Okay, cool. So now we can actually get started. And in order to do that, we have to do the prep step. Oh, interesting. Prep won't work because of the username leveraged on the dev container. Attempting to connect and clone quests. Which is interesting. Why are we trying to clone? A lot of these steps is go up to directories and clone quests. This is technically correct though. This is only if the directory doesn't exist though. It's attempting to go to build bin. Okay, so what we can do is we can go up to this directory, go to build, go to bin, right? And we can actually clone to this quests directory. Okay. Interesting, it's in baseline server, but we can work with it. So what we're doing is instead of having to do it in the dev container, we're going to attempt to get quests like this. So here's quests, right? We're going to go to code, SSH, get clone on server quests. And by doing that, when I do a prep again, it'll skip that step. Okay, so now DB is trying to get cloned. The problem with DB is I don't think it's going to exist anymore. Because I don't think I use DB anymore. Let's double check that. This was my old cell, you know, this setup. So I'm actually going to rename this to like V3DB. And the idea being that it is no longer leveraged. And then if we go to the make file, we can actually remove this because it's no longer used. Cool. So that's one off. Next, we need to probably clone web and app. I don't remember what app is. Let's double check that. It's the downside when you haven't touched a repo for like over a year. I'm assuming app is a Go program that is... Is a website? What is this? Yeah. This, I think, was my service. It's like scripts and stuff. No, this is a website. Okay, so we're not going to bother with app and web for now. Because they're not as pivotal. App is probably the web server that was going to serve and connect you between the two services. You know, like, because Rebuild originally was going to be web driven. So we're going to just take those off. They're not part of prepping anymore. Okay, so now EQEMU is prepped. So now we got to do the DB in it. Speaking of, you know, I have all these. What I should be doing is this. I think it's like MariaDB init. Yeah, inject MariaDB. Now injecting, it's going to go to DB and try to run an inject on that. That is technically different now because this dev container probably has, no, it doesn't have a dev container. Probably has it in expansion. That has it. So what we need to do is we need to CD to base expansion and run make inject. Okay. So what it's doing is in my dev container now, it's creating an entire MariaDB instance. It's dropping the database on it. It's going to spin everything up. And it's going to have some generic username and password stuff because this isn't really made to be exposed or, you know, it's not a dev server. This is not a prod accessible server. This is just a dev box. And everything that is being modified is versioned. So, and it'll go and clone the database and we're going to need to update to the latest EQEMU master to properly support this database. But for the interim, we're just going to do some DB edits for, you know, the inject. See this inject custom? This will need to also be that. And pull. We don't need to do that or this anymore. This probably might need to be added. Let me double check that. Might be added to prep. Let's see. Nope, I already did that. Good. Yeah, you can see it here. And I think also, did quests get cloned? Yes. And okay. We're going to probably have to set up the VS config again. Because like, what I typically like to do is SSH directly into the quests directory. like this. I don't know how I could automate this, but essentially at this point, you create a VS Code folder, and inside of this, you configure it to use the Sumnico EQEMU Lua mods. So like if we go to the EQEMU config, I have to reload, that's fine. And that's going to probably need to install a few dependencies, like you can see here. The key ones we're going to need is Lua, that's Sumnico, and some of these others are just nice. They're not required though. Okay, and we need to set up the Lua. It's in EQEMU definition. It's in this bottom section. Right here. This junk, you just copy this and change this to absolute directories. So source, RebuildEQ, server, and then EQEMU definitions. That's it. Okay. That matters. So now if we open up one of these script files, ooh, this thing is like a mix of Perl and Lua. That's going to be gross. Did we clone the proper repo? Let's double check. We go to Lua mods and we go to build. Yeah, we're there. So you can see on the bottom, it's rebuilding the workspace. Let's see if IntelliSense works. Yep. Perfect. We're done. Where we should be done. Okay. So now that I have my little dev box with the database should be cloned about now. No, it's still sourcing. How's my machine doing? So we're up to 8 gigs of used memory. My CPU, honestly, one of the threads is getting spiked here and there, but like not a huge burden on this machine. So it is what it is. Got about an hour left on my battery without being plugged in. I might reach over and grab it quick, actually. Give me 1 sec. There we go. All right, so it's done. Good timing. All right, so now that we have it set up and it's injected, we're going to need to, you can see that it's been bound already to localhost 3306, which means this in theory should just work. Perfect. This right now is accessing the database. And we're essentially going to be flushing all of these AAs, which is interesting, right? And what's also going to end up happening is that here you can see like this new dev container change. Still in base DB branch, we're going to go ahead and fix makefile. That's going to be one of the commits. And what's going to end up happening is as we work on changes here. So for example, we're going to have a new AA section. So in the makefile, the sourcing is going to now include AA revamps. You know, we're going to be doing something similar to like how rules works, where custom rules, right? So for this to work, we're actually going to truncate, and it's going to be like all of them. So AA ability, AA actions, AA effects, AA ranks, rank effects, prereqs. There's a lot. Required level cost. Form pets. Timers. Just something like that, you know? And so now we flushed it. And we can actually run that. And it's going to, you know, obviously destroy the connection. And that's fine. Just localhost junk. Okay. So to do that, we just do the inject custom command on our SQL source directory. And that took, we refresh, you can see this database is now empty. And you might be like, oh no, we don't have any data. How do we like refer? Well, we just open up another instance of Beekeeper. And we'll just connect to potentially just the content DB. There we go. Now we have copy with all of the AAs there. And then what we can do is we can grab one of these, copy it as a SQL statement, and we can start building out all of the AA tables. So structurally, like for example here, this is AA ability, unknown AA. Let's do init strength, okay? So we're going to follow the chain for init strength and use that as an example for our first AA we're going to inject. Cool. So we have init strength, and we just injected the database so that it has it back. First rank ID is 2, okay? So what we're going to do is, you know, AA1, rank ID is 2. There's probably a description somewhere. I don't see it on here. Classes will be important. Okay. So now we're going to go to rank IDs. Find rank ID 2, which is the first row. I don't like this doesn't go cap. And now what we can start doing is let's double check how this works. So we have hotkeys, we have the title SID, which by default, it looks like title SID is 2. I believe title SID is the string DB-US reference. We can likely utilize another mechanic for that. And description SID is also going to need to be updated. I'll probably reformat this a little bit to make that easier to read. But yeah, a lot of this data is going to be revamped, including like expansion. I might increment expansion on each field. And then you have previous and next ID. Okay. So what we'll do is in this case, probably also copy the next row. Toss it in here. And you can see there's slight variations. So like the title SID is the same, but then the description SID's different. We may need to make a generator for DB string, and it might make sense to lace it into the SQL file just to simplify injecting a I'll have to think about this though. So what I could do is put in here like, let's go get the RebuildEQ. Is we can look for, I don't know, let's look for leech. Okay, so leech is going to become AA number 1. So what we do is that leech needs some information attached to it. So what we could do is say like, SID leech and leverage. What is the value of, I think it's, so cost description SID. So let's just do that. So even like this, I don't even remember the description is this. And the name here, we may want to create a dump system here, but essentially we can use comments, right? There's 5 ranks. You know, this is an example. And then in this case, the description, I could make the description. I feel like if I keep it generic like this, it'll be like, you can do it like that, you know? And there'll be 5 ranks. Wait, if it's 2% per rank and it's 5, that'd be 10% total. You can see where like Copilot totally picks this up and has no problems. And we could actually parse this and make a DB string generator with this as well. That in game, you'll get the descriptions updated, and all you have to do is edit this line. Might be a little cumbersome with this field, but that's all right. So the cost is 1. I'll probably tweak this layout so that it's easier just to like at a glance know the different things. Like level rec 51 can be 1. And next ID is 34567, which means that's something here. I don't like that ID is all the way over here. I'd rather that be the first section. In fact, I'll probably tweak cost be at the end. Which does impact the top one. And then I'll put it on the end of each of these. That. Now, description SID is going to be unique for each one. Expansion, these are all going to be expansion 0 probably. And ID is going to be incremented as is. That kind of worked. Anyways, so yeah, this would update DB string. This would be a the other is title SID. Where's that at? Way over here. So it's on column 3 currently, which is 2. So what we could even do is say title SID currently 2, and it'll be just life leech. Rank 1. That's obviously wrong. When you finish this, you'll have rank 5, 4, 2, 1, and this would be just life leech. Something like that. Because this is essentially the preview page, I believe. We'll have to test that in game. Cool. So with that done, we can go ahead and attempt to inject this and see if it actually succeeds. So we'll put some ending clauses, do new source. And you can see we already got an error. That is one downside to the way I'm injecting is it's not verbally or visually very obvious what's going on, but it looks like you have a SQL syntax error on line 7, which is likely not 7, but instead 1. It's the 404 line. Which is interesting. Why is one failing? Are these values off some way? Not that I can tell. We could utilize my NPC custom system that I was working on before to help clean this up and make it into, where was this? I think I put it in RebuildEQ E3D. Let's see if I have it. But I had these prepared SQL queries at, here it is, custom NPCs. So you see I have these procedures I created. What this allows me to do is fun little injections where you set variables and then you call a function and then you just pass arguments. In this case, I don't know if that would make sense because it's not like a heavily embedded inject, and I'm also not updating existing data. I don't know if that's the right case for this, but let's at least do this for now. We're just going to cut this off and then run an inject, see if it succeeds. It does. So for some reason, the 404 line is failing. Let's attempt take out 404 and just see if it works. Yeah, so there's something wrong with what I did with 404. I can't visually see it. So 404, -1, 530, -1. This looks perfect. Take out the row and just see if it's just that row. Just that row. If I take it and put it back. Oh, now it's working, of course. Anyways, so let's refresh this page. Now you have life leech injected. And if we go to ranks, there's all the life leech ranges. So there we go. Probably write a little program that will generate the title, SIDs, and descriptions as well, based on the data on this. That should be really easy to do. I could even write it inline. Like I could do an aa.go and just make it where it, I think I could just write it. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, we don't even need to do a stat. We can just do a r error os open aa SQL. Actually, in this case, you can just return error. So we defer the close. Now we're going to make a we need to do a DB string injector. That might take some finagling, but we can make this work with some finessing a little bit later here. I'm gonna debating what I can do about my memory. You see how it's turning red down there? That just means I have so many tabs open. My laptop is running out of memory. Let's see if we can figure out what the biggest contender is. It's Beekeeper. Look how expensive this freaking instance is. And then each of these code instances is 500 meg. Well, so we can close my little commentary locally. Okay, that helped a lot. Because, yeah, I'm down to 77 now. Good enough. So anyways, okay. So we're going to basically parse this and read line by line. I think this will, yeah, that's all I want. Make a buff IO scanner. And Let's see if it just runs. So if we go to expansion, wonder if go run will just work. It does. Perfect. So what we'll do is possibly I'll just make a dbstring.go. And we need to have a baseline db string, which I could actually version in here. And then it generates an out file that goes into your bin directory. So I don't know if I've ever done that before. Made a db string parser. It won't be hard, but that'll be a to-do on another day. The whole point is that this will basically say, you know, strings trim, and then like if strings has prefix, or actually like this. If the length of line is less than 3, just continue. And then if line 0 doesn't equal this, continue. So this means it's a comment. And then we can write like a parser, be like, I like to do this too. Line number equal 1. And then every time you do this, we increment by 1. Why isn't it like this? Not enough arguments and strings trim. Oh, it's because it's space. Okay, parse, and then we can do error. Function that parses. And at this point, we can run a switch. We can just basically say, no, you don't have to do that. You can just like that. So if it has the word, we could actually do this. Records is the strings split with a space. Ooh, it wouldn't technically be space. We could do that. So like if the length of records is less than 2, just return nil. But yeah, and then so records 0 could actually be to lower, so it's lowercase parsed. And then we can just do cases here where it's like and then at this point we can say like we always will know that if the length of records is less than 3, then this would be an error. Just like that. And otherwise return nil. And we'll just print this and be like, now if we come back here, we should return an error with the line number. This will actually be the file as well. Okay, so if we run again, now we're getting all the comments. The line will actually be 2. There's also always going to need to be a space. Interesting. Why does it not parse these? Those look right. And that looks like a quote space. Line is trimmed. Let's do a printf and be like, oops. And let's just see if we can figure out what. Yeah, so 0 to 1. Oh, it's going to be 0 to 2. Perfect. Now we have a parser. And it now understands, like, here's title SID. And then if it's a description SID, it's going to basically be the same code. Just like that. Probably you can ignore. There's not going to be a default failure like that. We could also leverage a pattern of like exclamation mark, as it is sort of like a parse element. This would actually be 3. And so now the comment on the top gets ignored. These all look pretty clean. And we update DB string. Simple as that. Eventually we'll load DB string and then we'll be like, this parser can just go through and identify these different titles and stuff and convert them. Cool. So, and yeah, this should still inject fine, right? Let's make inject custom. So we're going to just add this. Anything else we need? Almost 3 in the morning. That nap was pretty serious. I don't think so at this point. We're kind of just starting. Jamfest DevBox could likely be fixed to be RebuildEQ DevBox. The IP binding could be tweaked, but it's fine for me. And I want to make login server work via this. I don't think I ever fully got that working. That's on my to-do. Maybe I'll do that. I'll play with that just a little bit right now. Kind of work from there. The login server usually would just work with make login. Another issue we have is that we've never actually built. Cannot load cache. Honestly, I might need to double check EQEMU Linux dev container. I wrote this a long time ago, so yeah, we want to do make CMake. That's what I'm missing. Oh, we forgot to init with submodules, which look at that. I literally have the command there. Like I've done this before, huh? There we go. And CMake's done. Now we can do make build. This will take a while because it's going to compile all the binaries for me. But this is important because I'm potentially going to be forking everything. Oh man, it's going to be fun. Server-side edits are always a pain in the ass, but I did like when I made Rebuild back in the day. Which, do I have that? Yeah, I got it right here. I use these RB prefixes. Just the like RB pal. And these were all defined on a file that I made. It was a header file. You see here, I predefined all of the skills into these integers. And so what you can do is be like, oh, what does siren songs do in the server code? Doesn't do anything. You search for siren. Oh, wait, it does probably do stuff. It's just. So it adds a string return on build name. It adds a mana usage effect because it does a mana reduction. And it also has a the define. So it really didn't do much. It must have been, you know, managed via Lua. So this string IDs system in Zone, I probably am going to reuse. I might even just leverage this again. Like if we go back to RebuildEQ normal, where the heck are we? While that compiles, there should be a string IDs file here somewhere. So all I did is I appended to the end of this a bunch of new IDs that were RebuildEQ. I might even put it on the top. No, let's put it there. And this time around, I can bind it to the AA ID because AA IDs are now unique. So for example, now that we've defined leech, what we can actually do, go ahead and say, define RB. Maybe I'll do the same structure. And we could use the ability ID because each rank is technically the same ability. I don't know why you just pushed a committed thingy like that. That was a little weird there. There we go. Anyways, there you go. That's how we would make a ability. And so any server-side edit that impacts leech, leverage this diff check, and then that makes it easy to search. Super important for retention and for version checking. So anyways, this is going to take a long time. So we may want to probably call it because not really going to be doing much while this compiles. I do need to do a PR. So in fact, I'm going to stop this compile. And one of the things I'm going to have to do is follow the README. Yeah, my machine's starting to struggle. I might, or not my machine, but the server. Compiling is obviously a bit burdensome. I have a laptop that actually is really performant that I might end up setting all this up on as well. Same environment, but just have a little headless laptop doing it as well. But anyways, yeah, and I'll make it so that all of the, I have to pull down a new variant. And see this, these commands is what I'll have to do again. This lets me pull down latest master into my repo. So what we'll also write in here is make cmake make build. And the config file just has a RebuildEQ dev box command. And that's not really added yet, so. Yeah, I'll pull down latest main or latest master. And I'll start working on all this fun stuff. Probably move this over to a new server as well. But everything's versioned. You can now see that there's all these submodules that are being versioned here. It's probably a good thing that quests hasn't been. But I think if I open up quests while in the root directory, git versioning should trigger quests at some point. Maybe not though. And that's fine. It's technically not a submodule. But because it's actually in bin, that is good symlinked and it's out of the repo directory, so that's fine. Anyways, all right, I think we're gonna start calling it here. Some initial setup, configuration, getting things kind of primed. Definitely productive. Definitely need to get these binaries built so that I can start debugging login server and make it so that I can run it locally. And yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks again, everyone. We will have a good one.